Hey you, you know how we can unite? You know what the secret really is? What it's really all about? You're a neuron of Mother Ground. I'm a neuron of Mother Ground. You and I then need to process information rather than have opinions and defensive and argument and whatever. When you can focus on our relationship, we can break past our ethnicities or our race. We can go beyond all of that other hoopla. We won't need an existential self-imposed crisis like governmental authority, nuclear war, or NATO involvement bullying the rest of the world around. We won't need aliens to unite us. We just recognize that we're individual neurons. And we can walk around going, yeah, I'm just a neuron, 8.1 billion others. Huh. Or you can say, holy crap, I'm a neuron of Mother Ground. How neat is that of an experience to have for 80 to 100 years, give or take, living naturally. Maybe it's just crazy, but just check this out, okay? You want? Break it down for you. I set a timer. I hope to do it in maybe 5 minutes or so. We'll see. Joel Primick, cold dark matter theorist, physicist, University of California, I think Berkeley. No, Santa Cruz. Says that there's about 60 orders of magnitude in the universe, from the Max Planck length to the cosmic radiological microwave background, basically the edge of the known universe, what we would consider the edge of the known universe after the Big Bang. After God said, let there be light, and we had ourselves a bang. 60 orders of magnitude between those. Life itself is approximately at the center. You can recognize it almost like a clock face, in a way, because that which is the largest is also made up of the smallest. That which is the smallest possible conceivable particles. You know, the desert is the sand. He draws it out like a cosmic Uroboros, the snake eating its own tail. I can link to that, possibly. I can't include it on my master's thesis, evidently, which is where I'm condensing all of this professionally. But life has emerged approximately between, imagine it like a clock face, hours 7 p.m. and 5 p.m. Okay, from ants to humans-ish, right? We're approximately right there at that center. Ants and humans are both social organisms that have a brain-body ratio. They're kind of the similar, right? And that's where intelligence kind of comes on board. Okay, we have a real problem with death. However, death to me seems to be life self-emptying into innovation, if you consider it from the perspective of relationship, that the predator teaches the prey, or culls the ill and the infirm, and the prey teaches the predator in a way that to evolve, to adapt, to overcome its own individualist shortcomings through relationship. Another wonderful thing about this idea of us being neurons that hopefully invites us to recognize that sharing, subjective relationship as primary rather than the egoic individual self that consumption capitalism tells us is weird all about. We're actually community. I shared that in the video earlier. You, what are you? You can look at that earlier. We also need to understand ourselves holistically, and by that I mean holons. So holons are anything that is a whole unto itself that is also a part of a greater whole. So a letter becomes a word, becomes a sentence, becomes a paragraph, becomes a page, becomes a book. You as a human are DNA wrapped around a protein rod that's your chromosomes, is housed within a nucleus. It's kind of the mind within a community of organelles that are cells, that specifically do a job function within tissue that makes an organ of which you are a grouping of organs as an organism. Holons. Does that make sense? So you have a digestive system. You got a circulatory system. You have a respiratory system. You've got skin kind of holding it all together. That's called the integumentary system. Verdion helped me with that last night. You have a lymphatic system for drainage. You have a nervous system directed by neurons of a brain that can be said to be extension of sensation of what's coming from outside. You have a cardiovascular system, you have a skeletal system, you have a muscular system, you have a urinary system. Each of these holons are required to complete the bigger you. If any are missing, the you of your life is questionable, and if you live with them, it's a miraculous exception, we could say. Similarly, Mother Ground, Adama, scripturally, Adama, from which Adam is brought forth and breathed into the breath of life, can be said to have a lymphatic system in the freshwater portion of our hydrosphere that gets carried through with the atmosphere through winds and such to carry nutrients to all the rest of the skin, which would be the DNA life form wrapping, containing, helping to erode some of the geosphere structure, skeletal of edema that is a part of the carbon cycle that actually digests, really is more a digestive system for that carbon cycle, which is why you get seashells up in the Himalayas. It's because continents themselves kind of process carbon through the carbon cycle in that way. You have the deep oceanic currents that are helping the circulatory system, right? You have all of this. The life itself around you would form a mediating skin that is, in a way, having a conversation, that predator-prey dance, in which death self-empties into innovation and life processes and metabolizes energy in more efficient ways to enjoy community and grow closer in that community, and through that explore subjectivity, through specifically us, especially in our innovations, through art and through culture and through dog collars, little bells telling me I should stop. So what Adama needs is self-aware neuron, priestly stand-in that Genesis tells us. This is, again, my thesis. I apologize it's not professionally available yet, but gotta wait on the approvals. We are neurons having what could be considered a interior lucid dream of human history that from the exterior is the physical development of Mother Ground's bi-halves in ways of thinking, left and right hemisphere, the west and east ways of thinking that emerged with the Enlightenment that gave us our egoic focus and our individuality and our so many things, our paganism and our rejection of Christianity because it was an easy target, among other things, according to Peter Gay. The Enlightenment can really be said to be the emergence and evolution of the left hemisphere of neurons. I'll get to that maybe with a PhD or so. I don't know. I'm excited. From the interior, it looks like human history. We have an opportunity to take human history in this awareness and essentially become lucid. For those of you who have ever had a dream in which you recognize you're dreaming and you can interact with the dream but you don't wake up, that's called a lucid dream. The times that I've had them have all been instigated by fear, typically falling, in which the last I remember, I was in a mining cart that had gone off the rails, and I held on to that, and I held on to that, and I held on to that, and I thought to myself, this has to be a dream. Why am I in a mining cart? But I had to commit to holding on to where I should be going splat and overcome that level of fear. Sincerely assumed that I was going to go splat for that me to realize I was dreaming and then fly. Why, who doesn't fly? You go lucid, right? We're at this similar point right now in human history. We're at that late teenage phase, maybe. We might only be at the 5 to 6 year old phase, but we're 8.1 billion neurons having epileptic fits of war that used to be okay until that became industrialized and now became a profiteering mechanism for egos. And now we have nukes pointed at each other on the two halves of our brain, and the arrogant NATO half of the brain in the Western Hemisphere is got a gun pointed at the head of the other hemisphere that just wants to maintain a presence, just wants to essentially be left alone since the end of the Cold War, really, has repeatedly asked for that. And it's all driven by this egoic, epileptic egoism that consumer culture and our entire economy feeds. You know, you have to create an idea of lack in order to create a consumptive economy, right? In order to create an idea of lack, you have to have an ego that's butthurt and needing something, instead of just satisfied at the fact that you're alive and breathing and it is good, and that the statistical impossibility of life itself has science searching out for multiverses, spending billions to try to find proofs of them, rather than just admitting that there is something else. we could consider God. I mean, I'll give you Adama, enough, big enough for God, Be a neuron with me there. But as a neuron, whatever I set my sight on, whatever I set my behavior into is passed along to the neurons next to me. And I'm imprinting upon them their unsatisfaction with life. So as a neuron, my responsibility, honestly, is servitude to those neurons around me as best as I can. And I've sucked at that in the past. I've been prayerfully working on that for 15 years. I go to a hospital every week in order to try to remember to crucify my ego in that hospital of other people crucifying their ego. Together, go out among the people next to us afterwards and ask, how can we be of service? That's my responsibility as a neuron. It sounds like Christianity because it is. It's orthodox. That's the way it is. That's what we do. We strive to be Christ. We strive to see Christ suffering under the ego of everyone around us. That's pre-Roman Christianity, before it became a judicial system. It became legalisms and all these. Anyway.